Good evening, and welcome to another dreadful tale. Tonight's dreadful tale is the tale called The Traitor. It's about a man and a time machine, and of course, treachery. Sit back, relax, and set the dial of your time machine to 1957 and hear the dreadful tale of the traitor. It was only a short distance to go, and he was still holding the distance between his pursuers. Loomis looked back. The effort threw him off his stride. He sucked in gulps of air, which stabbed at his chest until he thought he couldn't bear it any more. But there, around the corner, were the steps, and a few feet below, the great oak door that would lead him to safety. Loomis almost fell down those last steps, and succeeded in locking the door before his antagonist could stop him. He slumped against the machine and wept, tried to catch his breath, and Loomis wondered if he could hold out there until the machine was ready. Almost. The machine was finished. A machine that would take a man back in time. But it was more than just that. To Loomis, it was an escape. Once the machine was completed, he would be able to forget. He would be able to put away all thoughts of guilt and conscience, because the machine went even further than he had hoped. It could take a man back to another existence, to what he had been long ago. A man could truly forget then. And Loomis had much to forget. Sometimes he had thought about it, how he had broken so easily, not because he was weak, but because only his work mattered to him. It had happened 2 years before. In Europe, it was there, in one of the satellite countries, that Loomis had broken some trifling city ordinance. But he was a scientist, and a famous one. And so after his arrest by the satellite government, he had been called a spy. He had been tried on trumped-up charges and convicted. But not so that he might be sent to prison. Oh, no. So that he might work for the enemy. It had not been too bad. There was a fine laboratory, and other men interested in science research. Loomis had almost been happy, until the intrigues began. There had been other prisoners, not as satisfied as Loomis, men who still yearned for freedom, men who plotted. In the end, they had been arrested, all of them. But it was on Loomis that the interrogators had concentrated. And what did political idiom matter to Loomis? He was a scientist who cared only that he be permitted to work. He had informed the others. So now he stood before the machine. It had been easy to inform, but not easy to forget. To his dismay, Loomis had learned that he was possessed of a conscience. He had begun to hate himself, and because he was a weak man, he had not thought of ways to punish himself, but of ways to escape. The machine was such a way. Loomis would go back in time. He would be, in effect, his own ancestor. He would forget what he had done and live out his days in peace. He would not go on hating himself. Gingerly, Loomis stepped into the machine. A button pushed here, a lever turned there, and the machine began to vibrate, to hum. 1 moment. 2. There. Loomis stepped out. He was wearing knee breeches and a ruffled shirt, and the street outside was a street in Washington, D.C., where colonial figures walked. It seemed quite natural to Loomis. This was home. The machine. He did not understand. He had no idea where it had come from. But it didn't matter. He was troubled. This man whom Loomis had become, was not happy. He walked silently from the room, his head bowed. He would have to leave the country, he was thinking. What he had done was unpardonable. He was a traitor. And worse. Loomis would have found it ironic if he had known whom he had become. But he had not known that he was descended from Benedict Arnold. I hope you enjoyed tonight's dreadful tale, and I hope to see you again with the next dreadful tale.